Hey everyone, we are here with our August book club discussion. We are talking about The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. It's good to see both of you.
Hi, I miss
Hi.
you.
I
I
miss
miss
you
you
both
guys.
too.
Well, we have to get into some gossip a little bit here, some read it forward gossip.
Vanishing third, am I right?
Yes,
Uh,
yes. You are right. We are losing a big part of our team. Jess is leaving us. She's going to do amazing new things at a cool new job, and we are so proud of her, but also so sad for us.
It's not going to be the same. I miss you already, honestly. I'm so
I
sad we don't get to see each other in person before you go.
I know it's definitely like surreal leaving in the current climate of things. And I can't give you all a big hug. But oh my god, I'm gonna cry. I don't know why.
Oh
Keep it together. Yeah, so I will be the vanishing third. I'm leaving next week. So next Thursday is my last day. Um
Don't cry, don't cry.
Don't cry. We're going to be cheering you on from afar, and surely every single person in the Read It Forward Facebook group is also going to be cheering you on in your next venture.
Everybody put in the comments how much you love Jess and are going to miss her.
Yes, exactly. Give her some advice for her next venture. And now this just means we get to have you as a reader in the
yes.
Facebook group, right?
I will comment all the time and be sure to tag you in every one. Every hour. Every hour.
Good. You'll hardly be able to even do your new job. This is
And I have to say, if you have to go, and I've been told you have to go, then at least we're going out on a good book.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely love this book. So definitely a good closing note. Good closing
me
chapter.
too. I loved this book. Who here read The Mothers, Brit Bennett's first book?
I actually haven't, but now I'm super excited to read it.
Oh my gosh, you must. First of all, The Mothers received, it was her debut novel.
I remember it had huge buzz.
Yeah.
Wild accolades that were so well deserved. She began writing it when she was still an undergrad at Stanford.
Wow.
And then, of course, just became a New York Times bestseller.
A real Sally Rooney situation.
Yeah. And The Mothers was actually optioned by Warner Brothers with Kerry Washington signed on to produce.
Wow, that's crazy.
I know.
Oh my God.
And she's having some repeat success, much, much deserved. This is her second near instant New York Times bestseller. And hello, HBO just secured the rights to develop this book into a limited series.
I saw that. Very exciting. I think this would be so cool to see on the screen, especially the all the different timelines.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
Yes.
and like her writing is just incredible. So it felt very cinematic, like reading it. So I'm excited to see what it will turn out like on the screen. It's so cool.
Well, there's this great article from Glamour where Britt says that the inspiration for The Vanishing Half came actually from her mother, who
Wow.
recalled a town from her childhood in Louisiana where everyone intermarried so that their children would get lighter. And to Britt, that was a very disturbing idea, and that's what sparked the idea for this novel.
That is wild. The more you know. I always find it fascinating when books are like centered around real places. Like Little Fires Everywhere to me, like it was crazy that Shaker Heights was a real place. And so that's interesting to know that was based
Has
on
like a kernel of truth in it. Yeah.
yeah.
Emma, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say I've been having a hard time kind of not describing the plot of the book, which I think you can synopsize, but kind of describing the vibe of the book. And I'm like testing this out, so let me know how you feel about it. I feel like I want to describe it as Nella Larsen's passing
Yeah.
written in the style of J. Courtney Sullivan.
I like that a lot.
That's my elevator pitch.
I thought of Passing so many times while reading this.
But it also has a very Saints for All Occasions vibe. Like that sprawling family story, intergenerational trauma, and like a very modern voice.
It also reminded me a little bit of Jacqueline Woodson and that book that came out last year called The Travelers, these intergenerational novels
The Travelers,
that center on one family, where you really get to know each generation, and what makes them different and what led them to the decisions that they ended up making. I love books that dive deep into families like that.
I think we just wrote a Read It Forward list. This is where the magic happens, people.
So you both can put it together then.
Oh, thanks, Jess. I want to do that as a parting gift to me.
So, but we want to hear from you. Put some other books in the comments that you feel fit that genre, and we'll actually make it a crowdsourced list. So
that's called user-generated content.
Okay, so I want to get into talking about the fictional town of Mallard, New Orleans. This is our setting for the book, and we see Mallard. This novel spans the 1950s to the 1990s, and really does feel epic, and most of it is centered in Mallard. Mm-hmm. So what feelings did you get about the town? It certainly looms large for its inhabitants, both people who have stayed and those who have left. So talk about Mallard a little bit.
Well, can I start, Emma? Is that okay? I liked hearing about why the town was founded. So basically the son of a slave owner got the land once his father passed away, and he wanted to create like a safe space for people of color. And so he kind of created this really small town that almost no one knows of. Everyone's like, yeah, I'm from Mallard. And they're like, is that a real place? And basically what his goal was, besides creating this like town for these people, is to also make each generation better than the past. And that means every child in generations to come will be lighter skinned. That was kind of his ideal of better. So I don't know, it was a hard thing to read about. And definitely a town that affected all the characters in the book in various ways without them even knowing sometimes. So it's a very complicated place. And I didn't know, it was hard to read about it.
Mm-hmm. I think also something that stuck out for me was that it looms large in the lives and the memories and the psyches of all of the characters, but you don't necessarily get a very good sense of the town itself from the people who live in it. I'm so bad with character names. Which one is Desiree's daughter?
Jude.
That's Jude, yeah.
So Jude is the only character who really talks explicitly about what her experience is like living in the town and how it shapes her. And of course, her experience is very different from the typical inhabitant of Mallard because she is not light-skinned and because they hold that as such a pinnacle of what their town is about or can be. So it's almost like we see both the goals and ideals and also the shortcomings of the town kind of in this negative space where like Jude should be safe, but she isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and do you think Desiree at all regrets coming back? You know, do you think for her and for her daughter, it ended up being a safe place for her to retreat back to, leaving this abusive relationship?
I don't know if Desiree ever grapples with Jude's lived experience in Mallard. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's because she just can't. It has to be just incredibly terrifying and difficult to have to confront your child's lived experience when it's negative in a way that you feel you can't change.
Yeah.
And I think for Desiree, it's all about the worst things that could be happening. You know, her father was lynched in front of her as a child. Her husband was abusive to her. Like, there are all these things that she has experienced that Jude is not experiencing. So for Desiree, that might be enough, you know what I mean, to kind of tip the scales. But also because of that, maybe she can't really internalize what it was truly like for Jude growing up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that reading about Jude's experiences as a child in Mallard was so awful. The things that she was called and the way she was treated. She was always an outcast there. And I don't think that Desiree can understand that because simply she, doesn't know what it's like to experience that kind of colorism within like the community. I do think she was trying to do what's best for her daughter and, taking her away from Sam. And I do think that she feels a connection to the town, despite what she says about how awful it is, because of her sister. And I think that she's always missing her sister. And, maybe being back home is a way of connecting with her again. But it's hard because you see this love between the mother and daughter, like it's very strong, but they're each going through their own struggles and they can't fully understand each other. And I think that's also why Jude sometimes thinks of her father. And she at one point, imagined him rescuing her. And that's such a crazy thing because, she knows what he's done. But she also knows that he would understand what it's like. So just, lots of emotion there.
I do think that the decision to go back to Mallard does have something to do with Desiree's searching for her identical twin, Stella. These two grow up inseparable. They're hardly ever apart for a moment. And then later they are separated. And then completely they lose touch. And then they have completely different identities and lived experiences, as Emma was saying. So do you think that we see that separation coming? Is it inevitable? Could you see the cracks growing between these sisters initially in childhood? Because almost they were indistinct from each other as kids? Was this separation coming?
I think that's something that Brit Bennett does really skillfully, especially in regard to the different points of view and the nonlinear timeline, is that she gives you just enough information to kind of wonder, but it doesn't. Nothing in the book seems inevitable until it happens. And then she kind of comes back around and fills in a little more information. And then you think of course it never could have happened any other way. I thought it was so interesting how we don't know until we switched to Stella's point of view quite a bit later that we know that she wanted to go to college. We know that she's very smart. We know they both had to drop out of school. And we can see that that might be a reason for her to go to New Orleans, but we didn't know that there was this additional reason, which is the husband in the house where they're working that summer has been sexually assaulting Stella. And not only did we not know that at the time, Desiree didn't know that. And she never tells Desiree. So then that also starts to help us understand how interior Stella is and how maybe we didn't see it coming because Desiree didn't see it coming, because that is how Stella operates. Like everything goes within herself.
Yeah, I totally agree again. I feel like I always agree with you. But it's good. I love reading about twins because I think that, you know, everyone knows or assumes that twins have a very special relationship. If you know twins, like in your life, they've probably said the same thing. And so it was very interesting to see these twins that are inseparable kind of go completely separate ways. And as you read more, like Emma said, you kind of understand when you see from different perspectives. And I think what it made me think about is that, again, like every person experiences the same thing very differently. And so they shared this childhood, they shared so much, and yet they saw things in a different light, and they experienced different things. And with Desiree, at one point, she said something about Stella being her like secret keeper, like the keeper to her secrets. But she never said the other way around. And so I think it was a reminder to me, like a reflection on asking people how they're doing always, and not just assuming that you know someone as good as you can. Does that make sense? So I feel like Desiree talked and told her everything and didn't ever notice and pause to think that maybe her sister had some secrets of her own.
Yeah, I think Brit Bennett does such a great job of giving these twins, you know, while they are on the surface identical, they really are complex individual human beings. And they take what happens to them externally and process it in different ways. And Desiree is like a chatterbox, and she likes to tell everything to her twin, and she's a little bit like a whirling dervish. And I think Stella, as Emma said, has such beautiful interiority that she like folds within and doesn't share with her sister. And so I think when we get Stella's point of view, that's when a whole other world is revealed to us, because we get the second character's point of view. Because initially, just reading Desiree's telling of it, it feels like a betrayal, right? Do you think either of them regret their choices? Do you think Stella ultimately has regrets?
Okay, who's being bad? Who has their work stuff up still?
I think it's me.
I heard a bing bong.
I think it's
It's gone now.
Sorry, Abby, go on.
No, I was just saying, do you think they have regrets, each twin, in what, you know, the path she's decided to take?
They don't seem to either of them really deal too strongly in regrets. In terms of, it feels like, especially in the last section of the book, when the daughters become friends and they become aware of each other, the sisters seem to think like what's done has been done, and especially on Stella's side, she thinks like, maybe I would have had a different life, and maybe that different life would have been better, but this is the life that I built, and once I crossed over, I could never come back.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me that Desiree's career was as a fingerprint analyst, for the FBI initially. So she is really using science to identify your physical genetic makeup. So do you think Brit Bennett chose this career for Desiree on purpose?
Like for thematic reasons?
Yeah, to match the seeking of identity and identification in the book.
I mean, good job if she did, and I assume she did. I heard a talk with her last week, facilitated by the marketing director at Riverhead, where the book is published. And she was speaking at this point specifically about the character of Reese and his journey, and how she didn't realize until significantly after she'd introduced him and his voice into Jude's story that there could be a thematic parallel between his transition and Stella's transition. But I think the fingerprinting thing was definitely on purpose.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it was a cool way for like distinguishing between the twins as well. At one point, she's like, I have a scar on my finger from when I cut myself, and that makes me different than Stella. And so like, I think it kind of showed that everyone's unique and different, even if you shared a womb. So
yeah. Well, let's get into the next generation, Kennedy and Jude. Kennedy is born with everything given to her, and Jude with comparatively very little given to her. And so what impact do their relative privileges have on the people that they become? And does it, do you think, affect their relationships with their own mothers?
Yes.
yeah.
Did you like one daughter more than the other?
Surprisingly, actually, no. At first, I didn't have much time for Kennedy. She's a very specific 1980s California upper middle class type, and I just thought, I'm not that interested in that. But what I was really interested in was the relationship between Jude and Kennedy.
Yeah.
And in fact, I kind of, every time we started a section with a new character, I thought, like, oh, but I'd like to stick with who we were with. And then the further I got into it, I'd be like, oh, yes, now this is my favorite character. So again, I think that just speaks to how good Brit is at what she does. And, at the outset, I would think, I don't know if this storyline is for me. I don't really, whatever. And then I'd be like, it's all I care about. I want 400 pages.
Don't leave. Yeah.
I definitely leaned, I think, more towards liking Jude, but just because she's such a go-getter, and that I was like, that's so inspirational, despite where she came from. But yeah, I agree with you, Emma. I mean, that's not shocking since I've agreed with you this whole video, but I do think I became more invested in each character as time went on.
One thing that I thought was really interesting is that so many of these characters are engaged in some sort of performance, right? I mean, we have Kennedy, who is an actress, that's her profession. But, her fans sort of sometimes blur the difference between reality and performance because they confuse her for her character. Then we have Barry, he's performing on stage in costumes, and then he removes them for his daytime life. We have Reese, who takes on a new wardrobe, but it's not a performance, it's not a costume. But there is sort of a stepping into a new role there. And then we have Stella, and you could argue that her whole marriage and her whole life is performative. So what do you think Brit is saying about the roles that we perform in the world? Do we think all characters here are active participants in their own performances? Do you think, is there a difference here between performance and reinvention?
I think that we are all performing like all the time. I mean, just think about like what you think sometimes in your head and the way you like act, with someone else there. So yeah, life is a big performance, and some people do more than others. But I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. I actually lost my train of thought.
Yeah, but you're saying like in some ways, everyone is performing in all aspects of their life, and to others to a higher degree, maybe.
Yes. Like Stella was the higher degree there, but.
And some have maybe a better sense of self-awareness about that performance than others. I thought it was very interesting on the Kennedy side to see how she thought about herself as a person and as an actor changed when she found out that her identity was not exactly what she had believed it to be before. And I thought it also put in interesting contrast the fact that her mother was interested in her ability as like on stage as a performer when she was a child, and how then you look back and think, was she interested in that because she thinks that's where she can see herself in me, her daughter? So I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know how much I think Jude is performing in her everyday life, and I think maybe that's one of the reasons that I was so drawn to her and interested by her sections of the book, because she seems so authentically herself, and we do see her interior struggles to figure out who that is, but in some ways she seems so much more secure in herself than many of the other characters, and that is something that's always interesting to me, because I guess that's like aspirational.
And I thought there was a line drawn between Reese, who is reinventing himself in order to live his truth, and Stella, who you could argue reinvents herself but is living a lie. Like, I think that there is a big line there where, for me, it's living the truth or the lie, and where does the reinvention take you? That's the difference that I see in those two characters and their experiences.
And there seems to be like a strong psychological toll.
Right, a sense of freedom or a sense of burden, where you can see each character sort of live that out.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, I want to talk about the ending.
Okay, go for it.
How long did you hold out hope that the two twins would reconcile?
Long time.
Yeah.
A long time.
Well, the last page, I think.
I remember the exact line where I realized, oh, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such an interesting choice. Because I think it's pretty true to real life that they just never did. But as an audience member, as a reader, you want them to reconcile so badly because you know that they both miss each other so deeply. But in that same way, they're like literally missing each other there's no way to bridge that gap anymore.
Yeah, if you don't communicate that you miss each other, you'll never know. And so I think we know because we're reading from both perspectives, but they never tell each other. And this is also before like you can like text someone, like you could be like, I miss you. But yeah, I held out hope for a long time because I do like happy endings, but I also appreciate when things are more true to like real life. And a lot of the time, if people, can't move past something, no matter how long ago it happened, their relationship changes forever. So I liked the ending, and I probably, after reading it, I was like, yeah, I think this way is good.
Maybe the happy ending is that Kennedy and Jude now have a relationship that they wouldn't have been able to have before.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, is I think we've got hope in that second generation, which for me left me not completely despairing at the end, knowing that they're not going to reconcile. I did have sort of some grains of hope for the next generation, and perhaps, their daughters will go on to be even closer. One can imagine. So that is our discussion of The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. I hope all of you enjoyed it as much as we did. It's such a rich book full of so many things to discuss. So I hope you all have a wonderfully rich discussion in the comments below, and talk amongst yourselves about how you enjoyed the book and your interpretations of some of these questions. And with that,
before we go, I just want to say I had this book with me when I came to visit my parents, and I was just finishing it, so I passed it to my mother, and she read the whole thing in like 4 hours.
Oh my
God.
God.
Like my mom. That's like my mom.
I mean, I know that she's a speed reader, but she like gripped it and ripped it.
This is the kind of book you can do that with.
Anyway, yeah, I think that's just like so emblematic of what a great page turner it is.
Yeah,
totally. It will definitely go down, I think, as one of my favorite books of 2020.
I agree.
Well, with that, we will say happy reading. And Jess, we love you so much. Continue to be a participant in our book club.
I will. Don't worry.
Bye.
Bye.